they know all the rules as far as what'll take money away from you and all that, like what you can't do, like not playing other people's music and all that.
Yeah, they don't do all that stuff.
How old are they?
They got their own music and everything. Not this guy. There's background music for his pretend play.
Yeah. How old are the other ones?
21 and 20.
Okay. When they started doing the YouTube, were they doing it together at first? Or they just both started doing it?
They were doing it together at first.
Okay.
And then they just did their own separate channels because people thought they were dating.
Okay. And was the content the same in the beginning?
No, the content was different in the beginning. I think in the beginning it was more of like healthy diets.
Okay.
With different foods and stuff, and then she switched to skincare and he went to waves.
Okay. I'm gonna have to check out the channels. So what do you think about this whole Ice Cube thing? Have you been following that at all?
Well, I've been, getting little pieces of it here and there. Mm-hmm. I did hear that supposedly he's canceled, or they're trying to cancel him. And
right.
I mean, he's always been outspoken for the culture, so
most definitely.
I find that kind of hard to do.
Yeah, I find it. But, I find it hard to take serious, like some young cats who don't really know what he's all about, trying to cancel him. I mean, and it's probably not just young people either, but yeah, he's always been radical, you know? Oh, he froze out for a second. Hello?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Oh yeah, I can hear you now. Yeah, he's always been radical, you know? That's always been his thing.
I almost kind of feel like he was purposely targeted for a reason. Mm. Because it don't, like, to him, he comes off like that way, like, like, first of all, where is this coming from and what is y'all talking about?
Mm-hmm.
He went.
You shouldn't have broke it.
But I broke it because he keeps winning.
It's freezing up a little bit. So you're saying he comes off like how?
I mean, even he comes off like, I don't want to say clueless to why people are taking this approach, but like as if he even feels it's unwarranted.
Right. Right.
So it's like, I don't know. I kind of feel like the spotlight was put on him for a different attempt and it backfired.
Okay.
He didn't respond the way they anticipated he would respond.
Okay, you're saying they were trying to trap him and he didn't fall for it?
Yeah, like trying to make him like choose a side, and instead he said that, either way you go, it's gonna be something you don't like. You gotta choose a side that does most for black people.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't see nothing wrong with that statement. But,
right. Well, the other statement,
you know, for some reason that threw everybody into a frenzy.
The other statement he said that made sense to me was, you're putting all this energy on me and what I said. How about on the fact that Biden didn't step to the plate when I came, you know, with an offer and tried to speak to them? How about the fact that Biden doesn't have a black agenda? Like, that's what you should be focusing your energy on. That's what I was basically saying the other day. People are focusing on the wrong thing.
And that's facts. People should be focused on the fact that he does not have a black agenda. The black agenda can't be a black female vice president.
Right. Exactly.
You know, you can't give that as some type of gratification.
Right.
Or expect us to have some type of.
Yeah. No, those are definitely facts. It's kind of like they're shooting the messenger, you know, when he's just like coming with something real that people should be thinking about. But at the end of the day, people aren't willing to sacrifice.
Right.
People just want what they want now, and they don't want to be afraid of, you know, another 4 years. But at some point, we got to sacrifice that short-term thinking and go for some long-term goals.
Could you imagine what our country would be like if we had the ability to just, in the sense of like in a basketball game, when you can sub out a player,
Mm-hmm.
you can sub out a president.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
You don't sub out a president from that game.
No, you don't sub out a president.
Only a football player. That is very
That's
funny.
kind of part of it too, is right. Like when you look at the other systems, like the parliamentary systems and all of that, at least there, everyone's like represented to different degrees. Here, it's just like winner takes all. You don't get anything if you lose.
Right. Absolutely.
So I don't know. I think Ice Cube's smart. I think what he's really trying to do is force Biden to come speak to him.
Yeah.
That's what it's really about. Even if people feel threatened by Trump, really that threat is just to get Biden to move. You know, it's like chess.
And at the end of the day, under the surface, it's about reparations.
Mm-hmm.
You know, ultimately, that's really what it's about, reparations.
Mm-hmm.
Without saying that word.
Right. Okay.
Because, you know, that word puts more fear in people's hearts than the 5 black people walking down the street.
Mm-hmm. Well, even Obama was quoted as saying he wouldn't do reparations, right?
Right.
Those were different times, though. I think
Right.
now at least people are talking about it.
Well, now action has to take place.
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
it's got to
we've
go
been
from
through the
talking to
era
action.
of conversation. Now it's action.
Yeah, that's true. And no time to wait. And that's what I was trying to tell people is like, if Biden doesn't want to talk after the election, you're going to lose your leverage, you know?
Oh, yeah. because of the condition of the country right now, I think the two positions that they're facing, I think Trump has to come to some type of stimulus deal for the people of America.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
For the families that are suffering out here. If he doesn't do it before the election, at least 72 hours before the election, he's going to lose the election.
Trump, you're saying, right?
Trump.
Mm-hmm.
Because of what the Democrats are promising, or Biden here are promising to bring a $2,000 a month monthly stimulus for Americans.
2,000 a month?
2,000.
Oh, I hadn't heard that.
I gotta look that up.
Yeah. Because last I heard, people were talking about, an extra 600 or whatever. Right? What was Bernie talking about, Joey?
I forget exactly, but Bernie did have a key role in ensuring that I'm sorry, that was I just got a pop-up out on my screen, but
Okay.
Bernie played a key role in the original pandemic benefits in ensuring how generous they were.
Okay.
And I'm not sure if he proposed anything specifically because his campaign was already winding down by the time the pandemic got really bad.
Sure. I feel like was 1,200 a number that people have been toying with?
Yeah, I've heard that discussed before too. I'm gonna look that up.
Okay.
How's it going, Joey? Long time.
Oh, it's going pretty good. I've just been kind of busy lately, but I'm definitely trying to appear more regularly again now. How's it going with you?
Pretty good. Always great to be in your presence.
Thank you. Same to you.
We had a little introduction by JC a little earlier. Jackson, what's the middle name?
JC Jackson.
Katie's son. I think it's Jackson.
Oh, cool.
Something. What's the middle name? So any news this week, Joey, that you've heard of, or anything interesting pop up?
I'm gonna think about that for a second.
What do you think?
I can't think of a specific news story right off the bat, but I have been thinking a little bit about the election and just about how differently it's going to be this year, in part because there's like such a discrepancy in terms of mail-in voting versus in-person voting, with Republicans far more likely to vote in person, and that's going to make election night very weird where it's going to look at first like Trump is going to be winning, is winning by a big
I see. Okay.
margin. And interestingly, there's a time where I was scared that Trump was going to use this as an excuse to dispute the outcome, and that a lot of his maniac supporters, like the Proud Boys, were going to try to prevent the certification of state level election returns, and that was going to lead to a huge clusterfuck. But then this week, interestingly, Trump indicated, and I guess this is the interesting story, Trump indicated that he might leave the country if he loses. And what that suggests to me is that he's talked to some of his lawyers and has realized that it would not be in his interest unless he wants to die in prison.
Wow.
Yeah,
given
the
See, I never even thought about that. Wait, hold on. I'm going to be right back. Hold on for a second.
Okay.
Again.
All right.
Okay, so yeah, what were you talking about?
I was just talking about how it's interesting to me that Trump said this week that he was possibly going to flee the country if he lost the election. And what that suggests to me is that he's probably been talking to some of his lawyers, and they've advised him that there's the possibility of lawsuits coming down the pipe at the state level, and that it might be in his best interest to flee the country, and at a minimum to not dispute the election outcome if it's clear that he's losing, because already he could be at risk for federal prosecution, and given his age, that would likely mean the rest of his life in prison.
Mm-hmm. And for which allegations specifically?
I'm not sure exactly what it is. I need to do more digging into that. I mean, I heard a while ago that in New York State, there were some investigations into his finances, but I would need to read up a bit on it a bit more before I comment. I mean, it really doesn't surprise me. Like, if somebody wanted to launch a fishing expedition and try to find something they could get Trump on, it would not be very difficult.
Sure. That's very interesting. So you think the reason that he came out and said that he was going to leave if he loses was so that people wouldn't be suspicious that he's fleeing the country?
I mean, yeah. I mean, obviously, with Trump, it's really tough to ever wrap your head around what his motives might be. But I do think that has something to do with it. Like, I do think that it's possible we may find out if, at some point in the future, articles and books may come out saying that around this time, like, there was some of his legal counsel came and basically told him that he was in deep trouble, and that would be an option he should potentially consider. And I think that really would be stunning if something like that happened, because we've heard for years about deposed dictators like the Shah of Iran fleeing their country, but we've never had that happen with a U.S. president, and it would be interesting to see, because, I mean, I do know that in the case of Bush, he actually can't travel to certain countries. I don't know if that's
Really?
changed now, but because there's like open. There were open investigations into him for war crimes, I think in Spain, I think in Germany. And I know that Henry Kissinger at one time was in France for some conference. I think this was in the 90s, and he had to flee because they were opening an investigation into him. So it's interesting that with Trump it could be the opposite, that for once we could actually have a president that's so despised as Trump is by certain sectors of the American establishment that he's not able to escape the possibility of justice in his own country.
Now, when he asked that question, if a president was allowed to, what's the word? If a president is allowed to, what is it, like, excuse themselves? What's the word when presidents, pardon themselves?
Yeah.
Yeah, did he ever get an answer to that question?
I don't know. I'm not sure about that. I'm gonna look that up. Did he actually like outright ask that question at one point of someone?
Yeah. Yeah. It was one of those out loud questions. You wonder why he asked it out loud.
Yeah. Okay, here's something in the Atlantic. Can Trump pardon himself? Oh, this is from when it happened. Yeah, apparently at one time, Gerald Ford, like when Richard Nixon was still president, Gerald Ford discussed the possibility that Nixon would issue a self pardon. So that's interesting. But yeah, I'm just gonna skim this article because I don't know what the consensus is on that.
I mean, it sounds counterintuitive that you would be able to pardon yourself.
Yeah. I mean, it also very much sounds like just someone, just the most corrupt, just the most textbook example of a corrupt manifestation of power, since that's obviously something that no normal person would ever be able to even dream of doing. And but here's a section from the article, because it is talking about when it was considered for Nixon. This is an article in the Atlantic from 2018. Since then, the idea of a presidential self-pardon has floated on the fringes of constitutional dialogue. Scholars are split on whether the president's constitutionally conferred powers to grant reprieves and pardon for offenses against the United States, except in cases of impeachment, include self-pardon. One side points out correctly that the text of the Constitution limits the pardon power in only one respect, cases of impeachment, and thus can be read as unlimited in every other way. So that's interesting, because the mere fact that there is the slightest bit of leeway probably is something that Trump would consider using on his last on his last day of office, and it would be interesting to see how the courts dealt with it after that.
Yeah, it would also be interesting to see if any of the allegations are tied in with the impeachment.
Yeah, definitely. And they might be. But I mean, the funny thing about the impeachment is there were probably other things that Trump could have been impeached on, like I remember some controversy about the emoluments clause at one point. I mean, the fact that the Trump organization still exists and his family is still involved. I mean, it really there are probably multiple avenues that someone could take if they wanted to Trump as next president.
Yeah. Well, it would be great if we didn't have to worry about, the president trying to stay in office, no matter what.
Yeah, that's what disturbs me so much about this election. Is I've just been thinking to myself recently, and a lot of people have not felt this way until this election. But I was thinking about how I've been following politics closely since I was in high school, and every election I've paid close attention to since 2004 has felt somewhat dire for me. Like in 2004, I actually thought that Bush was going to be a dictator if he got reelected, and thus getting him out of office was vitally important. And then in 2008, I thought that McCain was scary and that he was going to start a war with Iran. And then if he didn't, that he was just going to die in office and we'd end up with Sarah Palin as president. And then in 2012, I had kind of soured on Obama by that point, but I still thought that it was vital to keep Mitt Romney out of office. And then in 2016, obviously it goes without saying I wanted Trump to lose, but I just can't imagine what it would be like to have there be an election where I didn't feel that invested, you know, where I didn't feel like it was such a dire necessity for the lesser evil to win. I mean, I know you're a bit older than me. What were some of the earlier election? What was like the first presidential election you really remember following? And have you sort of gotten, like, how long have you, I mean, if at all, if you have you had that same sense as me that it was like vitally important to keep a Republican out for the past few elections?
Well, yeah, I mean, we've had so many Republicans in office, and you know, the pendulum swings so much. No matter how I feel about keeping them out, I know it's always a possibility that they're going to be in. As far as the first election that I can really remember was Dukakis, because I wrote a paper for school. I think I was, I don't know, I feel like I must have been like 8 or 9 or something, maybe 3rd or 4th grade, maybe younger. Maybe it was younger, because I mean the whole paper was like, if you want this, if you want that, if you want this, if you want that, vote for the Duke. You know, it was like an endorsement, you know, assignment basically. And
Oh,
it was
that's
like,
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess
surprisingly good for that age.
Yeah, that does sound good. I mean, you know, ahead of first election I remember actually was 96 with Clinton and Dole, and I just remember, at least where I was in my elementary school class, it seemed like Clinton was pretty widely popular at the time, and the same thing with adults. Like, I don't really remember that much about the election, and I wasn't really political, except that I think I favored Clinton because you know, all the adults I knew did. And then in 2000, I was in middle school and I voted for Gore and followed the recount. But I guess in that election I didn't really have any sense that the outcome really made much of a difference. So it's kind of funny with me that I sort of went from being aware of politics but not really invested in the outcome of elections to then thinking every election was life and death. And I sometimes wish I could just go back to 2004, the day after Kerry lost, when I was just crushed, when I was devastated, when I thought Bush was going to be a dictator. I wish I could just go tell myself, you're 15 years old right now. Just worry about getting a job, worry about getting a girlfriend, just enjoy your life. Things are going to be a lot worse than this. You should just, you don't know how much worse it can get. You just don't let it ruin your life.
Sure. That's good advice.
Yeah.
That's great advice. Yeah, I do remember what it felt like under Bush, and it was like he was just taking all of these liberties and expanding his power left and right. And it was a scary time. It was the first time in my lifetime that I had ever seen something like that. And it was kind of like, you know, he kind of felt like a Teflon Don.
It's true, yeah. And in some ways even more scary because he had an actual rally around the flag effect. He was actually more popular in the first few years after 9/11 than Trump has ever been. And that's why be someone that was noticing how scary things were getting back then in regards to the Patriot Act and all that.
Yeah.
It felt like you were more alone, more isolated than now in a way.
Yeah, well, it also depends on what your circle was, because at that time I had just gotten into, grassroots organizing. And so, my circle was filled with people who were smart and just actively aware and engaged in these kind of things. So that was good. That definitely allowed me to act on how I felt about these things, like whether it was, going to Washington, D.C. or New York City to marches. I was living in Buffalo at the time. And, going to rallies and checking out Answer and things like that. It was certainly the first time that, the political aspect of things became more of a reality. And I saw what it was like to just be around a bunch of cool people who were interested in like the same thing,
Yeah, definitely. I guess I didn't really get that sense until I was in college, and particularly at the new school, and just sort of gravitated towards anti-war and anti-war organizing, which by this time, this was not really until 2008, so it was already at the tail end of the era in which that was even going on, and a lot of people were already excited about Obama. But regardless, it was still, I still did have that moment where I felt relieved to be less alone, because when I was, for me, in 2003, 2004, I was still in high school. And at that point, I grew up in Norwalk, Connecticut, and Fairfield County at that time was, Connecticut's obviously a blue state, but that area was kind of 50-50. It was very purplish. So I saw a lot of Bush signs around election time. And I didn't have the sense that there were a lot of other people that were like-minded. And I was just a kid. And I think I just have a tendency to just be really intense, and to just, when I become passionate about something, to allow it to consume me in some ways. And I think I guess that sense of not being in a place where my opinion was necessarily the consensus one, just being young and having no perspective, I did sort of feel like I got into this stuff in, like, maybe an unhealthy way from an early age. Maybe I was, in a sense, extremely online before that was a thing.
Yeah. What was the being online in the beginning? What was that like? Like, what did you use it for?
I gravitated. I got into the Howard Dean campaign, and then sort of gravitated to the liberal blogosphere. And at the time, I was kind of a junior member of it, like sites like Daily Kos and Atrios and Digby. And I also listened to Sam Cedar when he was still on the Air America, like when that was a thing, which was actually just starting right then. And at that time, I think I think it was a lot more just mainstream liberal Democratic Party politics than the circles I'm in today, obviously. But and it was also, I was also one of the youngest people on there. It was overwhelmingly Gen X, like some older millennials and a few tech savvy boomers. But I was definitely at the youngest end of the age distribution there.
Mm-hmm.
Like, actually, probably a lot of people, I mean, you're kind of like an exennial, right? So it was probably like a lot of people in that age, I think, dominated political talk at that point.
Yeah, I guess I would be considered. Yeah, I think millennials start like 4 years after I was born. Millennials start in like 81.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, the other term I've heard is I've heard for exennials sometimes is the Oregon Trail generation.
Oh yeah, that's yeah. So there's 17 days until the election.
Yeah, it's crazy to think about. It's so this has been such a surreal year. I mean, going in even before the pandemic, you knew that Trump running for re-election was going to make for a strange election, but obviously it's become strange in ways we couldn't even have conceived of.
Yeah, but yep, yeah, for real.
I mean, especially since like it's hard to believe, really, actually, that I haven't been to the city since before COVID either. So it just feels in a way like the past 6 months have just sort of flown by in the blink of an eye. I mean, sometimes it feels like in the past I would sometimes just stay with my parents for 2 weeks up here, and sometimes these past 6 months just feel like a really long 2 weeks.
Right, right. Yeah, there were definitely times when things were dragging, for sure. And this just the cycle of staying in and not being out and about was definitely weird. I feel like I just had like a dream where I was like out at a bar or something.
Yeah, I have dreams like that all the time.
Yeah.
Hopefully at some point next year maybe things can get somewhat back to normal.
Yeah. And now I'm thinking what's gonna happen for Christmas. I feel like a lot of my cousins are more likely to go down to, Atlanta, to my parents' house for Christmas. But, I feel like I'm more careful than that. And, I definitely have like asthma and some issues that make being more careful warranted.
That's understandable. Yeah, I in my case not so much for my own health but for the sake of my parents I haven't left, and I've actually looked into possibly going back to the city and subletting an apartment. But if I was to do that, I obviously would just to similarly be careful, would not come back up here unless I was sure I had immunity.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. They say you're supposed to quarantine if you come back from certain places.
Hmm.
But yeah, some of the folks my mom and my sister are getting together in Syracuse for Thanksgiving. Um, which that'll be like that'll take it back in the day before my folks moved to Atlanta, going back to Syracuse for holidays. I'm definitely not going to that one. That one I wouldn't even think of. But the Christmas one, I was thinking of like just looking at what happens and if anything gets safer. But I think all in all, it's just smarter not to, because it's like every time things get better, people get happy and try to take advantage, and then they make things worse again.
Exactly. I mean, it's really horrifying how everything has sort of happened that way exactly as we could have predicted it. Like if you think about the states that opened up early, and like everyone was saying they're going to see a spike in COVID rates, and then it happened. And because of that, I mean, it's and the same thing with school reopenings. It's just horrifying how like this whole thing has been like a slow moving train wreck or a slow-moving car crash that we could see coming a mile away, but just couldn't do anything to stop.
Yeah, it's a teachable moment too, you know? It's like if you practice patience and if you have leadership that, you know, lays down the law in a certain way and says, this is how we're going to move, this is how we're going to operate, you know, for the good of the state or city. You know, I think people are generally now able to craft a message like, stay home for Thanksgiving this year so you can see your loved ones for Thanksgiving next year, right?
Yeah, that's very smart, and I think that's absolutely true. And I hope people are able to see that now. And I also think that too that it's like I feel like part of the only reason the anti-mask side or just the pro early reopening side was able to gain any traction is ironically because people were legitimately afraid they were going to lose their livelihood, so they were forced to roll the dice on risking my life by going to work or by wanting to have the economy reopen early. And you know, and that's why you just wish that it was just a matter of course that every time this thing, I mean, obviously that we had universal health care, but also that every time this thing happened, a leader could say, oh, well, you don't have to worry about losing your house or anything, basically.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's good, strong leadership comes into play. That's people that are like smart and qualified and also like compassionate and like all the good qualities that you look for in a leader before, you know, people started trying to be funny and thinking that, you know, these reality style leaders were going to provide, you know, some entertainment and leadership. I mean, I spoke to a woman on the phone today who she was like, yeah, Trump, he says whatever he wants. And I was like, yeah, he does. That's not that's not what we want in a leader.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's really depressing when you think about the fact that too that Trump's support is really so cultish. The fact that you could have this many, like over 200,000 Americans dead, and his approval rating has not budged. I mean that is a sign that we're just living in a world where a certain number of people have this parallel reality, but it's horrifying how many people, that is like 4 out of 10 people in the country, and you really just wonder how we're ever going to break from this.
Yeah, it is messed up when you think about how many people are for this person. You know, I mean, one of the good things that that woman said to me on the phone was, you know, I wish there was a third option. And I was like, yeah, you know, I do too. I definitely do too.
Oh yeah, I think a lot of people do.
But the fact that we are divided as a nation over someone as vile and incompetent as Trump, it just really shows you, you know, how far apart people are in their thinking and in their education of these kind of things.
Yeah, and I think to some extent that divide was there before, but I think social media has made it worse because, like we were talking about Bush before, and in the same way Bush was more popular than Trump has ever been at one time, he was also more unpopular. Like after Hurricane Katrina, after the financial collapse, after the Iraq War turned out to be a complete disaster, it's like the country, there was still enough of a sense of objective reality at that time that a sizable majority of the country, even people who had voted for him, realized by the end that he was incompetent. And like somehow in the decades since then, it's just gotten exponentially worse.
Yeah, I mean, valuable lessons under George Bush, we realized that like logic and a paper trail did not mean anything. I mean, like just very, very basic logic. Like, wait a minute, this person from this nation bombed us on this day, and now all of a sudden we're starting a war with a completely different nation, and everyone is okay with that.
Yeah, exactly. That, yeah, it's just, I mean, when I was like 14 years old, I realized that made no sense. It's, I think that's true. We did get a basic lesson in logic.
This is going to cut off soon. What do you want to do? Do you want to go again, or?
Yeah, I'm down to go again. I think maybe I'll take like a 15-minute break though first because I want to go on camera and so first gonna hop in the shower and then get dressed.
Okay,
All right, cool. Maybe then some other people will come on.
sure.
Yeah.